Welcome to the Cool Tools Show. I'm Mark Frauenfelder, Editor-in-Chief of Cool Tools, a website of tool recommendations written by our readers. You can find us at cool-tools.org. I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Kelly, founder of Cool Tools. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, it's great to be here.
In each episode of the Cool Tools Show, Kevin and I talk to a guest about some of his or her favorite uncommon and uncommonly good tools they think others should know about. Our guest this week is Jorge Camacho. Jorge is a strategic designer, foresight strategist, and lecturer based in Mexico City. He's a research affiliate at Institute for the Future, a co-founder of Diagonal, which is a futures design studio based in Mexico City, and a board member of the Plurality University Network. You can find him as J_Camacho on Twitter and on Medium, and we'll have a link to Jorge's Twitter. So if my spelling threw you off, you'll find it there. Hey, Jorge, how you doing?
All good. Thanks for inviting me, Mark. Kevin, it's really great to be here.
Oh, we're really enthusiastically eager for your recommendations and to hear about what you're up to.
It's been very, very fun to prepare for this.
Oh, good. Good. So I am glad about your first tool because I am a user of Pocket, but I don't think I've ever talked about it. But
no, I don't know anything about it. Describe what it is for us who don't, like myself, who don't know anything about it. What is Pocket?
I'm glad that I'm the first to recommend it in the podcast. So Pocket, which actually was called, when they originally launched, I think in 2015, it was called Read It Later. So I think the original purpose of the tool is to basically save links or save articles in order to read them later.
Okay, so this is an article that you're reading on the web. So is this is this for if you're on the phone or on the desktop? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of the features that I really enjoy is the fact that you can use it on your browser. You can use it on the mobile app, and also for the browser you can install these extensions. And what that means is that no matter where you are, reading or scrolling or, in general, getting access to the web, there is always like a 1 or 2 click route to save whatever you want to save for later. So I have set for myself this workflow where even if I'm just like walking around and I'm scrolling on Twitter or drinking coffee, like very informally, I can very quickly save a link. And also, whenever you save a link, you can add tags, which is very important for what I use it for. Basically, a few years ago, when I started using it, I first started using it as a way to, for its purpose, to save articles. But then I realized that I wasn't really reading the articles later. I was just saving them. That's why.
That's what I do too.
Exactly. I've told friends that I'm a digital content hoarder. Because I save so much, and gladly I don't have to keep so many magazines or newspapers just lying around the house. But eventually, my use of the platform became more of a, more attached to my professional work, which involves, reading a lot of articles, but specifically saving a lot of, these examples, what we call, like signals of change, that I may use later for a project. So basically, these examples of innovations or interesting things happening anywhere in the world that we may connect with other signals later to start to find trends and all these things. So I realized that this was a very useful tool to build a sort of personal database of this type of content.
And so you're saving these and then you're adding a tag to help you basically categorize them or find them later. But generally, are they all going into one big folder, or do you also have to So how do you find things later on? After you've been doing this for years and years and years, does it have a really good search function? Or
yeah, definitely. So you can, Pocket itself has a very intuitive interface where you can search for things. You can also navigate your tags and then select specific tags. So, for example, I used, like tags like signals or, Mexico or privacy. And very easily I can navigate and find those tags and then retrieve, so to speak, all the links that I've saved using those tags.
Mm-hmm. And how is it different from something like Evernote?
I think I would say I also use Evernote. I use it more to take notes than to save links. There may be some functionality similar to Evernote that I haven't really used that would allow me to replicate this workflow. But I also appreciate the simplicity of Pocket, the single-minded focus on saving things as opposed to, Evernote and other more recent tools that allows you to save things while also, annotating them or writing notes, etc. So the thing that I really appreciate is the simplicity and probably the fact that I have just become used to using this tool, whereas maybe there are others that could fulfill the same function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use Evernote, and I didn't even know you could annotate. I've never done that. I've only saved things.
One of the cool things about Pocket, I think Evernote does it a little, but Pocket's really great at it. I see an article I'm interested in. I just click my little browser extension. It saves it to Pocket. And then when I read it, it gives me a version that is typographically very simple with the images, and all the ads have been stripped out of it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's it's very refreshing to read an article that way.
Exactly. Right. It's very good to read. It's also, as a reader, it's very useful. Something else that I've done recently is that I have started using, if this then that, to build these little applets that connect Pocket with other things. So, for example, one of the things that Pocket is not great at is to share, to share not just single articles, but if I wanted to share my full library of articles for a specific topic, Pocket is not great for that. So something that I've done, like a workaround that I've developed, is to connect Pocket with my Google account, so that every time I save an article with specific tags, it automatically also saves the article and with a lot of interesting, metadata to a Google spreadsheet. So I can see, the date, even it extracts a small picture from the article. It includes the tags that I have added. Obviously, the URL as a summary that you can pull from the specific website, and therefore I can have, on the one hand, like a automatic backup of my collection of articles, and also a more easily shareable database, so to speak.
Okay, cool.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Pocket.
That's Pocket, and so. There's a free version that's fairly limited, but like you said here, it's $45 a year for the full featured version. And I think it's like a ton, if not unlimited, a whole bunch of articles can be stored.
And you can also save the content offline. So I think even if the original site or article disappears, you get a backup copy with the premium version.
Oh, that's great.
Is cool.
Super useful. That's good. All right. So the next one is a really cool one that, again, completely new to me and probably to our readers. Tell us about this.
The second one is a travel guitar. It's called the Baby Taylor BT1 travel guitar. So, I obviously play the guitar. I've been playing it since high school. But I don't know. I'm probably not the only one that that you start to get a little bit lazy, unless obviously you are a practicing musician every day. You start to get a little bit lazy, and you start to find less and less moments throughout the day to pick up the guitar and play something. So I have a couple of electric guitars and amps and all the things, but sometimes I feel not necessarily have all the time, or I don't want to be hassled by connecting everything and really have a proper playing session. So for a while I wanted to have just like a guitar lying around that I could quite easily pick up and play something even in between meetings. And also recently my teenage son started to become interested, and even if he's tall and has big hands, when you start to play, it feels much easier when you play with a small guitar.
So because the frets aren't as far apart.
The frets are as far apart, and the I forgot the name in English, but in general the whole post, I don't know how it's called, but it's a bit, the neck is a bit thinner as well. So it's easier for, I know that a lot of people buy these travel guitars for kids as well. As the name implies, these are originally designed to take them around for travels. And I also sometimes do that. I haven't really taken it, on the road or something like traveling abroad or anything, but I do travel, inside Mexico, and the most often travel I make is to a nearby country house. And I've taken my electric guitar and amp before, but again, it's a bit of a hassle. So, all these things combine, and also in the context of the pandemic, I wanted to have a guitar and pick it up. I know that a lot of people started playing an instrument, or picked it up again. So I got this. It's the Taylor BT1. I thought that it was going to be more of a toy, but actually sounds really good. And my kid is playing it, and also I just have it literally next to where I am at any time, and it's quite easy to just pick it up and start. So I've been trying to learn new songs, and even trying to come up with my own ideas, something that I wasn't doing that much recently. So it's been sort of like one of these great things that you get to make the pandemic a bit more, or the lockdown a bit more bearable.
Can you tell me how much smaller is it than a regular guitar?
I think it's 3/4 of a regular guitar. I don't recall at the moment the specific measure, but it feels a bit smaller.
And is the frets and the strings the same length? It's just that the box is a little smaller, or does it shorter overall? I mean, is it kind of like shrunk like a miniature version, or is it just does it sound any different?
No, it's the same length. I think it's mostly the body, because if you were to change, there's probably a small difference in terms of the length of the neck as well. But if you were to change that big time, you would then have to tune it different and all that. But this is not the case. The guitar is tuned in the same way as a regular guitar. You can play it in the same way. So it's just, I think it's mostly the body that it's smaller. So it really doesn't feel that different from playing a regular guitar, except for the fact that it's more comfortable. The body is smaller, and you can carry it more easily. You can have it lying around, as I said, more easily than a regular guitar. And overall, it feels more like less of a like a commitment, or to play when you have a regular guitar, or specifically an electric guitar. You really need to sort of like say, okay, now I'm going to play the guitar. Whereas this is something that you can just quite easily pick up.
It's very attractive too. It's just a nice, clean look. There's not a lot of ornamentation on it, or that pearl inlay. It's just it's really cool. I love the
Very
coloring
simple.
of it. And I see that the price is $379 US. And so that's seems like a reasonable price for a Taylor guitar.
Exactly, it's very affordable, and it sounds great. I think it's not only a good option for the case study, the case, the case that I just described, my case, but it's also very good for someone that wants to start playing without committing to a more expensive instrument, or more professional instrument.
So, Jorge, tell us about your third tool.
Sure. So the third tool I picked is it's called the Mescalero Glass. So this is another pandemic thing that I got into is spirits. So I like spirits, mostly whiskey, for a long time now. But during the pandemic, it's not that I've been drinking more. It's that I've been, maybe a little bit, but not so much. It's, what, the thing is that I've been learning more about spirits. So I've been reading a lot. I've been watching a lot of YouTube. There's a bunch of great YouTube channels talking about different spirits and reviewing spirits and all that. And one of the cool things that I've learned is that having the proper glassware really makes a difference when you are trying to enjoy a spirit rather than just drinking for socializing.
Interesting. So the taste, alters the taste?
You know what? Not so much the taste, but the smell, the aroma. And that makes a big difference. If you think about it and if you experience it, really most of the experience and the enjoyment from a nice spirit, in the same way as a wine, comes from the smell. And actually, I think this applies to food in general. I remember that when I was a kid, I was really fussy with eating, and my mom would offer me something to eat, and I would just smell it and reject it. And my mom would say, "How do you know you don't like it if you haven't even tried it?" And it's because, with the smell, I was already able to say that I wasn't going to like something.
Yeah.
And I don't, right? Have you experienced the same thing?
Sure.
And it doesn't, obviously it doesn't apply to me or only to food. Most wine and spirits experts agree on the fact that, I don't know, like a big portion of your experience drinking something comes from the smell. And that's why different, that's at least one of the reasons why different wines and spirits have different glassware to be enjoyed. So, for example, one of the most popular ones for enjoying spirits, or specifically whiskey, is the Glencairn glass, which has a shape that allows you to rotate the whiskey and therefore really concentrate the smell on the top before you drink it. But the Mescalero glass, which is actually designed by a Mexican designer, Jose de la O, a friend of mine, he designed something similar, but specifically for drinking agave spirits. So tequila, mezcal, and a bunch of other local agave-based spirits, which have been becoming more and more popular because they are really, really interesting. I don't know if you've tried a lot of mezcal or tequila, but there's really interesting spirits there. And over there in the States, specifically in California, you have access to some of the best agave spirits. So this glass is designed for the same, for concentrating the aromas, in this case of mezcal or tequila, so that you have a really, really enjoyable experience. It's great. I really recommend getting one.
Yeah, it's kind of a bulbous shape that kind of then widens at the top to like a kind of a funnel shape.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. It's an
And I
interesting.
can't tell from that description or the picture about how big is it. Is it like a shot glass, or
It's
is
yeah.
it
It
larger?
it's a small. It's small. I would say it's a bit larger than shot glass, but much smaller than, for example, an old-fashioned glass. It's much smaller, but it holds the right amount of mezcal or tequila. You know, that similar to a shot glass, but with this different shape that allows you to much better experience the aromas.
And would it also work drinking whiskey with it?
Yeah, I'm guessing it would also work. It depends. I mean, for example, I think there are many preferences. I mean, I think more preference with regards to how people like to drink their whiskey. So, I mean, this could work also like a Glencairn glass for drinking neat whiskey. But of course, if you want to add like ice, as many people like to do, specifically with bourbon, for example, then both this Mescalero glass or the Glencairn glass wouldn't be the best. So these are mostly for drinking neat spirits, and I think it could work as well for whiskey.
And so for mezcal, is it recommended that you drink it at room temperature?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's very rare to put ice on mezcal unless you're making a cocktail, which is also really nice. But you
And
drink.
the ones that you are recommending, they are also borosilicate, which are
Yeah.
what we call Pyrex. They're sort of very, I wouldn't say unbreakable, but they're very sturdy.
Sturdy.
And you have 4 of them for $65. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. And actually, I would recommend getting. I think I don't recall now if they only offer the set of 4, but I definitely would recommend getting more than one. And this applies not only to this specific glass, but to any tasting glass. Because something that is great and that I do very often is to pour a little bit, like a dram, as they say, of 2 different whiskeys or 2 different mezcals or tequilas, and try them next to each other, because the comparison, it really makes a difference to get the different agaves or different types of
Sure.
whiskey. That's an experience that I really, really recommend.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, that's a very cool one, and I think that would be like an excellent gift also for someone.
Yeah.
4 for 65. That's great. And this so the Lao shop is this based in Mexico?
Yeah.
I imagine there's shipping to internationally might
Yes.
be a little more, but that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good, Jorge. So moving on, tell us about a book that you're reading.
Yeah, so I'm also recommending this book. It's not a new one, but I thought it could fit well with some of the topics that I know you explore in this podcast. And it's called Austerity Ecology. It has a very long title, so it's called Austerity Ecology and the Collapse Porn Addicts: A Defense of Growth, Progress, Industry, and Stuff. And it's written by a Canadian journalist called Lee Phillips. So the reason why this is an important book for me, and a book that I recommend, is that we are specifically, this year or every year, it becomes more and more clear that we are living through an ecological crisis, right? But at least for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, the first, reaction that you get, or the almost like the default way of thinking to which you arrive once you start to get worried about this ecological crisis, is something related to thinking that in order to tackle this crisis, you need to undo a lot of the things that we have done as civilizations. So there's a lot of people that fall into what may become like anti-technological, anti-progress, anti-modernity positions. And of course, Lee Phillips is not the only one, but that promotes actually a different response. Rather than being just aimed at undoing things that we have done wrong, about it, the book focuses on a lot of things that we should just do differently by not shying away from technology or modernity, but actually pushing it forward in a different way. And apart from that overall argument, I think one of the things that I like the most about this book is the kind of wit or cleverness, and even at some points even funny perspective in which Lee approaches the topic. So, for example, he has an excellent chapter titled "The Great Primordial Flatulence of Doom," which is really funny. And it talks about the great oxygenation event, when bacteria started to produce oxygen and all that. So it approaches the topic with scientific rigor, but also with like a really funny perspective.
So this is an anthology, is that right? If I understand it correctly.
It's not an anthology; it's a monograph. So it's a self-contained book.
Okay, all right. So it's a book that he's written, but he is reporting on other people's work.
Yes, he's reporting on different kinds of movements and ideas that surround, environmentalism in general. And I think overall, I would describe it as a kind of like a controversial, and his style is very on purpose controversial. So, for example, one of the main mantras of the environmentalist movement is "small is beautiful," and he has a chapter titled "Small is not beautiful," basically contesting that idea and showing how scale, planning, and a lot of things that sound authoritarian or sound alien to someone that is interested in solving the ecological crisis may be not just important but central to solving these problems.
Okay,
that sounds really interesting.
So the book, again, the name of the book is Austerity, Ecology, and the Collapse Porn Addicts. So he's saying that some people are kind of addicted to this idea of dystopia, and that the solution to the crisis we have, climate and otherwise, is not to pull back from technology, but to lean into it and to make it better.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. That sounds really great. Can you tell us a little bit about what you are working on these days that you wanted to share with a project that you're maybe engaged in and want to share with our listeners?
Sure. This is what I would call a research project, and it has it's still evolving, and it has different outputs, and the kind of outputs that it's having are also evolving as opportunities arise. One of the main outputs that I originally intended it to be the main one is a Medium publication called Preferable Worlds, and again it's sort of like building on some of the stuff that we were just talking about in relation to the book. It's a bit, I think it's a simple idea, but it builds on some specialized theoretical ideas that are in the field of future studies, but also in other fields. So it's not necessarily for the everyday reader, even if I think that my contribution is somewhat simple. In future studies and in futures practice, including for example, in the work that we do at IFTF, at the Institute for the Future, one of the frameworks that we use very often is derived from the futurist James Dater, who a few years ago proposed that we can, analyze existing images of the future and also generate new images of the future based on 4 archetypes, 4 different generic images of the future. So we can imagine futures of growth, futures of collapse, futures of discipline or constraint, and futures of transformation. And something that I'm trying to do, or that I've sort of realized, and that forms the basis of this publication, is that Dater's framework works very well, not just as the tool that we use in futures, but also as something that I call like a theoretical compass to navigate, to map important scientific and theoretical ideas that are coming up recently in fields such as, economics or political science or ecology, certainly, or in social movements that are basically representatives of people that today would propose or defend one of these 4 alternative futures to the present crisis. So, for example, you get people like Mariana Mazzucato or Carlota Perez who are proposing a new and interesting conception of how economic growth may evolve over the rest of the century. But at the same time, you have people specifically writing in Europe, authors like Rafael Stevens and Pablo Servigne, who propose a new field of study that they call literally collapsology. And at the same time, you have people working in the field that they call degrowth, whereas you have a lot of interesting authors talking about terraforming and how geoengineering may be really important to address the planetary crisis. So in a way, you can use Dater's framework to map and orient yourself in all these different discussions that are taking place even beyond future studies. So the publication, in the publication, I'm basically making these relationships explicit and using them to explore, given that I work as a designer, strategic designer, using them to explore how the nature of design may change over the following decades from the perspective of these 4 alternative futures and the specific ideas being developed that can be mapped to these 4 alternative futures.
And what's an example of design changing, or what's your guess of how design itself might change in 10 years or 20 years for that matter? Do you imagine like using AI, or do you imagine other kinds of changes ahead?
Definitely. I mean, you could say that, for example, the increasing convergence between design and artificial intelligence or computational intelligence, etc., is something that will continue to become really important. I mean, it's already quite important and will continue to be, but it's something that I would map to 2 of these alternative futures, mostly the growth future and the transformation future. Why? Because these are the types of futures where design evolves around technology more clearly. But I'm also interested, and I would say actually that most established discourses around the practice of design today and how it's evolving are looking at these existing images. So the increasing reliance on artificial intelligence, for example, to design new things. But I'm also interested in exploring what may happen if, for example, the degrowth movement, which calls for a slowdown of our economy, a radical reduction of our use of energy and materials, what if this movement were to grow and to start to become more of an established power in governments around the world? So, for example, what may happen if designers were tasked with helping people to reduce their resources, their resource use, or to make more desirable or even delightful, much more simpler ways of life without relying on so much stuff. Or what would happen with what kinds of design practices may need to evolve if, as some of the authors I mentioned before are right when they say that some kind of at least slow form of collapse is already inevitable. So what would happen with design and designers and our design practices if over the next, say, 30 years, our high energy civilization would start to crumble slowly and slowly? What would be our responsibility as designers in a collapsing world?
And where are you? Where are you now with your project? What is the status, and when might other people be able to enjoy that or share that or participate?
Sure. So interesting that you say participate, because I'm doing it also as an open and participatory project. So next week, I don't know when this podcast will be released, but as part of the Primer conference, an international futures conference, I'll be running a workshop to explore with designers and futurists, how design practices may evolve in these different futures. So that's one output. I have done these workshops before, and I will run and facilitate a new one very soon.
So
and the other,
presumably we can have a link, if it hasn't already happened, we'll have a link
sure,
to your workshop
sure,
in the show notes.
yes, and there's one more thing quickly, and this is a bit of a sneak peek, but I'm also curating an exhibition that will be inaugurated in October in Spain, and in this exhibition, along with a more historical retrospective of different images of the future, I have commissioned 4 new installations where I've invited leading thinkers like Carlota Perez or Rafael Stevens to collaborate with design future studies to build installations that represent and make immersive experiences out of these 4 potential futures. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek, but I'll be able to show more in October when this is inaugurated.
So going back to your preferable worlds, I don't know if you recall, but I did a couple of years ago, I did a little contest, I would call it, an invitation, where I asked people to submit to me a description of the future that they wanted, a desirable future, in 100 words or less. And I paid the winner some $100 or something just to encourage people to submit them. But that's up on the web somewhere. So I had them in 100 words or less describe a desirable future, and that exercise is very, very powerful, and I really applaud you in your effort to have people try to describe the future that they want, because it makes it so much easier to get there.
Exactly.
So I'm really, really enthusiastic about that. Thank you for sharing that, and we'll have links for people to kind of follow up and find you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Jorge, this has been fantastic talking to you and getting to know you and your interests a little more. We've done quite a bit of work together at Institute for the Future, and I've always really appreciated your writing. You write very well in English, which is fortunate for me because I really enjoy reading your writing. So thanks for helping a monoglot like me.
Yeah, I always learn so much when you edit my writing, Mark. You are making me, if I already write, not that bad, I'll be writing much better after collaborating with you. It's been great.
Good.
Yeah, good. The editor is always right. That's my motto.
Yeah, exactly. It gets the job done. Yeah. All right. Well, Jorge, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you again. Really enjoyed your picks.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Hey everybody, it's your co-host Mark, and I wanted to let you know that we have a lot more going on here in Cool Tools than just this podcast. We have our flagship website where we review a new tool every day. That's at cool-tools.org. We also have 4 different newsletters. We have this podcast. We have a YouTube channel where we review tools. And if you like what you hear and see and read, the best way to help us out is by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/cooltools and donate at any level you wish. You can even contribute $1 a month, and that would mean a lot to us. The money that you give us will go towards paying for our transcribing costs, editing videos, and editing the podcast. It goes towards paying contributors who write the reviews for us. It goes towards our equipment costs, our hosting costs, and it supports our very small company of 3 people. This week, I wanted to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters who have been giving us at least $2 a month. And if you give us $2 a month, we'll give you a shout out online. And this week, I would like to thank Michael Sakochia, Molly Starr, M. Velderman, Opposable Thumbs, Pamela Cooley, Patrick Weyer, Paul Hosey, Randy Fisher, Stuart Burroughs Brand, Synaptic Sam, Therese Schwartz, Tom Hawkins, Tom Markham, What Bear, Javier Pangolin, David Lang, Eric Byers, Sean Hartley, Stephen Powell, Greg Lichtscheit, John Hobson, Adam Bristol, Adam Naher, Anonymous, Bill Kempthorne, Bruce I. Niles, Chris Woodruff, C. Kolos, Daryl Flynn, Egg Fleegoff, Eric Hanschrau, Eric Hoover, Godfrey Saldana, Jay Skiles, John M. Larson, Jude Galligan, Kenneth Gilman, and Lucas Frank. Thank you very much for supporting the show, and we will see you next week.